PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. I'm sorry to disappoint all the fans of Svetlana. I'm taking her place for this round 13 report. She's not able to do the report because she's actually spectating at the candidates tournament in Toronto. There we go. But she will be back to round things up for round 14. So just a quick reminder of the scores going into round 13. Tan Zhongyi out in the lead with 8 points and just a half a point behind her compatriot Lei Tingjie on 7.5. So Tan was playing very solidly, and I think it was always clear that her game was going to end in a draw. Lei Tingjie had black against Rameshbabu Vaishali, and this was a long game and Lei was under pressure. But she could hope at least to hold a draw and then she would still be in contention. So here we go, Vaishali against Lei. This is move 56, Lei fighting for a draw. The computer says this position is equal, but there's no doubt in my mind that white has the better chances here. Why? Well, white has space. You can see the pawns here give white some space. That's very nice. Nice active knight on e5. And here's something really important in the position. White's king is safer than black's. Well, why is that? Well, you can see that the pawns here will give the king some decent protection. That king on g7, it lacks an f-pawn. You know, it's vulnerable not only along the 7th rank, but along this diagonal as well. And that's potentially a problem. So Lei scrapping for the draw here. She played knight d7. Well, that's a good start. This knight is a beautiful piece, and why not try exchange it off? And Vaishali did exchange off, but replaced the knight with her queen. And we can see that yes, the king is vulnerable, not just along the 7th rank, but along the 8th rank as well. Although, I mean, black's position looks really solid, and objectively, that means the computer assessment, it should be equal. King g3. So this king, covered by these pawns and the queen, is creeping up the board. You know, you can imagine a scenario where even after an exchange of queens, the king might enter into the position. So this is, you know, this is still tricky for black. Queen c6, looking at the bishop and setting up a threat to the f-pawn. So bishop e4, and Lei exchanges bishops. But that does bring this pawn into the centre, and now there is potential for white to advance the d-pawn and create a dangerous passed pawn. Okay, perhaps it's time for you to have a little think here. If you were playing with black, how would you defend this position? So Lei Tingjie must try and hold a draw here. She needs to keep in contention for first place. What would you play with black? What's the best move? Lei played king f7, and that is a big mistake. Such a natural move to bring the king closer to the centre and to guard the e6 pawn. It's a fatal mistake. h6 is necessary. It's not a beautiful move because look, these pawns are now both somehow vulnerable, but it's absolutely necessary. And the point is this, that if white were to simplify here into a pawn endgame, then because these pawns are like this, there's always the chance to create an outside pass pawn. In fact, this position is actually winning for black because this king will scoop up the d-pawn and white will have to take care of that h-pawn. Winning for black, simple. Of course, white does not need to play like that. But even in, you know, this kind of position, well, actually black is okay here. You can see There's a problem with that f-pawn disappearing. The king is slightly exposed, and basically white can advance the d-pawn, but white's king will always be exposed to checks, and black has enough to draw. So h6 is the crucial move, absolutely necessary. Why is it necessary? Because after king f7, Vaishali played g5, and that cripples the pawns. So now, if there's going to be an exchange of queens, then white will be winning the pawn endgame. And that makes all the difference. I suspect that Lei had just been analysing d5 and looking at the intricacies of that. But this, first of all, g5, it's such a clever move. Right, well here, in fact, Lei blundered straight away. Well, we're already at move 62, and I suspect, this is at the end of a long day, and that's when blunders happen. You're short of time, you're exhausted, you're tired. Okay, let's look at, before we look at what happened in the game, let's look at, possible defences. So what about moving the queen here to try and attack the king? Well, watch what happens. A check. I mean, that's the other reason for playing g5. It supports the queen. Another check. And the king enters into the position. So once it gets to e5, then this is curtains for the king. So you can see the queen covers the c7 square. Okay, you can check the king forward, but the king is actually perfectly safe. And then it's white's turn. Oh, I can see this is a very, very easy win. I mean, you could just advance the pawns, but actually in this case, you can transpose to a pawn endgame, and that e-pawn is going through. Okay, let's look at another one. What about queen c8? Now, this is trickier. Basically, black is just sitting back passively. But watch what happens. First of all, well, there's no need to push the d-pawn yet. First of all, let's squeeze black. a4, that's a nice move. Just cripples these pawns. Black is passive anyway, and why not fix those pawns? And it might be useful later on to have an extra pawn move. Now, we can see one of the problems, for example, with queen d8 is that these pawn endgames are always going to be winning for white. In this case, the king comes across to support the d-pawn. You can see how that g-pawn just cripples black's pawns here. And the king is just going to have to go back. And this is an easy win. Black is forced backwards. So after a4, okay, king g8. Okay, we're going to squeeze in. Basically, we want to move the king in as we saw before. But it's not so easy to do that. But have a look. I mean, this is a very nice technique. So, yeah, if the king had come to f4, then queen c1 checks. So watch this. We can creep in. And there's one very nice moment here. Okay, looks like black is holding firm. King f3. This position is Zugzwang. That means that black has to compromise. Whatever move black makes, that compromises the defensive position. So, for example, if king h8, then queen f7. I mean, no more king moves, and yeah, that's fatal. And the queen can't even move off the back rank because of checkmate. So not king h8. Okay, let's try another move. Okay, what about queen c6? In this case, the king can advance because there's no queen b8 check to stop the king coming to e5. King e5, and we're in like before. So this is such a clever idea. So not king f4, queen b8 keeps the king out, but king f3 puts black into Zugzwang. It's such a beautiful idea. Okay, that didn't happen. Let me show you what happened in the game. Queen c1 loses immediately to the queen check. And you can see once again we just have a winning king and pawn endgame. And yeah, that's the end of that. So for example, let's just go to the end. Here you can see that black will have to give up a pawn and eventually either play king c7 or, well, you can see what happens. It's the end of the game. So really nice endgame from Vaishali, and yes, that is the key winning move, g5. Vaishali's had such an up and down tournament, losing loads of games, winning loads of games in the second half of the tournament, but she's out of contention. The tournament is not over. So going into the final round, round 14, Tan Zhongyi in the lead with 8.5. Lei Tingjie a point behind on 7.5. Now, Tan Zhongyi has black against Anna Muzychuk. Anna having a tough tournament, but she's a very dangerous player and she has white. And Lei Tingjie has white against Humpy Koneru. So, well, if Tan loses and Lei wins, then it'll be a tie. Anyway, Svetlana Demchenko will be back to give you a report on round 14 and tell you exactly what it was like in Toronto. So we look forward to that. And yeah, I'm very grateful that she's been covering the Women's Candidates Tournament, and she's done an absolutely fantastic job. Do take a look at her videos. She has very calm and clear analysis. I warmly recommend them. Thanks for watching.